I feel like I'm dying here. I feel like I have handcuffs on, Chris Hemsworth recalls telling his boss, Marvel Studios chief Kevin Feige. The role of Thor, hammer-swinging Norse god of thunder, may have transformed Hemsworth from an Australian TV actor to a worldwide, household name, but the actor describes himself pre-Ragnarok as frustrated and bored. After critically mixed outings in Thor, The Dark World and Avengers, Age of Ultron, the crimson-caped Avenger had lost his mojo. But at a meeting that some in Hollywood might consider unusual, Feige not only listened to his star's concerns, he took notes. "It has to be funnier, it has to be unpredictable," Hemsworth remembers saying. "Tonally, we've just got to wipe the table again." That reset for Thor and a massive infusion of improvisational humor comes courtesy of Ragnarok director Taika Waititi, who has helped transform Marvel's most stately and straight-laced property into a zany, no-holds-barred adventure that gives Guardians of the Galaxy competition for the oddball crown. Hemsworth's first two solo movies, more staid and Shakespearean in tone, noted bard expert Kenneth Branagh directed Thor's debut, even inspired in-universe ribbing courtesy of Tony Stark, Shakespeare in the Park. Robert Downey Jr.'s character snarked at Thor in the Avengers. "Doth mother know you weareth her drapes?" Taking the idea of Ragnarok, the Norse concept of destroying the world and building it anew to heart, the third installment in the Thor trilogy actively, and sometimes cheekily, rips apart everything we once knew about Hemsworth's character. Feige, for one, was not concerned about Thor's dramatic Ragnarok makeover. "When we started Hemsworth on Thor," Feige tells me, "he has blonde hair, he has a hammer, he has a cape. These are the things that make Thor. He has now appeared as that character so many times that Chris Hemsworth is Thor. So we cut his hair, we got rid of his hammer, and it's still him." It was Hemsworth's idea to cut his hair and destroy the hammer, moves that Waititi, whom Hemsworth describes as also being sick of old Thor, wholeheartedly endorsed. Hemsworth credits Kevin Smith, whom he once heard bashing the Thor franchise on a podcast, for inspiring him to speak his mind to Feige. "Hearing someone like Smith, who represents the fanboy world, was such a kick in the ass to change gears," Hemsworth says. "We sort of had nothing to lose. People didn't expect what we did with it this time around." Ragnarok takes Hemsworth's hope for a new start to extremes by letting Anthony Hopkins's Odin die and Asgard crumble to bits. The love of Thor's life, Jane, Natalie Portman, and her human companions Erik Selvig, Stellan Skarsgård, and Darcy Lewis, Kat Dennings, don't appear at all, they are written out of the narrative with a single tossed-off exchange. Thor's faithful companions, the Warriors 3 aka Fandral, Zachary Levi, Hagun, Tadanobu Asano, and Volstagg, Ray Stevenson, are bumped off with not much more screen time and minimal fanfare. The cape is ripped, the bulky armor, his face is disfigured, and there's a new woman in his life, Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie. In essence, the only Thor accessories to survive the original films are his adopted brother, Loki, Tom Hiddleston, and a significantly more rough-and-tumble version of the gatekeeper Heimdall, Idris Elba. This gamble on Waititi's off-kilter style and a wipe-the-slate-clean Thor has already paid off for Feige and Marvel. The creative experimentation in Ragnarok has not only helped further bury the studio's old reputation for stifling the individuality of its directors, but earned the movie a healthy $109.1 million at the box office before American audiences even got a peek at it, and is projected to earn another $100 million, domestically, its opening weekend. While he may be one of the most physically imposing members of the Avengers team, Hemsworth says he's always felt tremendously unsure about his place in the larger Marvel universe. "I thought maybe I might be in the first Avengers," he explains. "But I never thought there'd be a second one. I didn't look that comfortable on my first 3 films. I gotta say, recently, it felt more concrete. But before, it always felt like any minute, it all might be pulled out from under me." Hemsworth continues. "Some people come out of the gates with all the confidence in the world. And I think I was always looking for someone to steer me in the right direction. But looking back on films that didn't work and going, I knew it. My instincts said, don't do that. It's about trusting yourself, and listening to your gut, and the pure education you receive. Making these films. I take responsibility for that. I'm not pointing fingers at writers or directors. But then it became predictable, or overly earnest, self-important, and serious. Nothing that was unexpected. In 2015, Thor, the Dark World director Alan Taylor described his work on the film as wrenching, telling Uproxx, I was sort of given absolute freedom while we were shooting, and then in post it turned into a different movie. Even Hemsworth's director on Ultron, Joss Whedon, was frustrated with the state of the Asgardian hero. Thor is always the hardest guy to integrate, Whedon admitted in 2015 of his difficulties putting together what, ultimately, wound up being a fairly incomprehensible vision quest in a cave. Marvel fans were especially worried after Ultron because, in theory, that hard-to-follow cave scene in which a shirtless Hemsworth envisions those Marvel movie MacGuffins, the Infinity Stones, was meant to set up what was intended, at the time, as the plot for Thor's third movie. But as Marvel made its future plans, Hemsworth sat out of Captain America: Civil War. With 2 winning back-to-back appearances on Saturday Night Live in 2015, he started to make a name for himself as a comedic force that defied the expectations set by his handsome, blonde, leading man looks. He cemented that reputation with scene-stealing roles in 2015's Vacation and 2016's Ghostbusters. Though Thor: Ragnarok was in the works, it had already been delayed once when Waititi entered negotiations in October 2015. Whatever Marvel had planned for Thor in that cave in Ultron, it seemed to have fallen mostly by the wayside by the time Waititi formally came along. Despite all that foreshadowing, only one Infinity Stone very briefly rears its glimmering, confusing to the audience head in Ragnarok. Thor isn't the only Marvel character to get a significant makeover in Ragnarok. Thanks to old and complicated licensing deals with Universal, Mark Ruffalo's Hulk is unable to be the lead of his own Marvel movie. He can, however, co-star in another character's film, and Hemsworth, for one, welcomed the backup. I want as much help as I can get, Hemsworth says of sharing the Ragnarok spotlight with Ruffalo, especially if it's a Thor movie. I'm like, give me Hulk, give me Spider-Man, give me someone to help me take the weight of responsibility off my shoulders. Instead of giving Ruffalo a solo movie to explore a full Bruce Banner arc, Feige and Marvel offered the actor a storyline split over 3 installments. If you had a standalone Hulk movie, what would you like to do in it? Ruffalo recalls Feige and Marvel co-president Luis D. Esposito asking him. I kinda laid out what I thought would be interesting to explore. And they said, okay, let's do that starting at Thor 3 and carry that all the way to the end of Infinity War. So, you'll have a character arc. It'll be Banner's story. It'll be as if he had a standalone movie, but we'll bury it in 3 different movies. But while Banner makes a significant appearance in Thor 3, the bulk of the screen time belongs to his green alter ego, the Hulk. It's hard to do this character in a standalone movie, Ruffalo admitted, because you're watching somebody who, for 2 hours, refuses to do the exact thing that you always want him to do, turn into the Hulk. But as the actor points out, motion capture technology has advanced significantly since first Eric Bana, and then Edward Norton, played Hulk in tepidly received solo outings. That technology, coupled with Ruffalo and director Joss Whedon's initial insistence on 2012's The Avengers that the Hulk's face be made to look like Banner, means that Ruffalo can pull off an emotive, funny, and, now, verbal version of the Green Monster even outside of marquee action sequences. With Ragnarok, Ruffalo explains, the hulkied-out version of his character can hold that human interest for longer stretches. And the character may stay in burly green mode for even longer in the upcoming 2-part Avengers adventure. Banner certainly hints that the next time he transforms into the Hulk, as he does at the end of Ragnarok, he may not be able to turn back into his human form. Wait for the end of Thor 3, Ruffalo says, gleefully predicting audience reactions to his character being potentially permanently trapped as the Hulk, like, what? But Ruffalo doesn't see any of this as a radical departure for Marvel. Rather, he explains, it's the natural transition for a studio buoyed by a decade of positive feedback. Marvel's maintaining and deepening their belief that if we trust the talent and we trust ourselves, which has worked for us, always, across the board, now we can expand this universe in a way that'll keep it interesting to people. We don't have to force a tone from movie to movie. We don't have to force a look from movie to movie. All we have to do is carry those characters with some semblance of the last story. With that in mind, and we could actually even bury leads as well. But I contend that it's exactly how they've been making this whole thing from the very beginning, and they're just becoming more and more confident with that model. It's having faith in people's love of these characters, and the comfort level of knowing who they are, but also the excitement of knowing that you're gonna maybe get something a little different than you've expected before. And Guardians of the Galaxy opened up a whole new. I felt like that opened up another door in the Marvel Universe, you know? It could go to space, it could be funny, it could be colorful, it could be it has a style that's totally disconnected from the rest of the Marvel Universe, and so on and so forth. I think that opened the door for Taika, you know. So he's like the natural, next generation of that kind of thinking. Next, we'll see these new versions of Thor and the Hulk again in the big team-up movie Avengers, Infinity War, which will have to balance a lot of plot and an unprecedented number of stars along with any experiment in tone. But before that, we'll also get Ryan Coogler's dramatic Marvel departure Black Panther. In other words, Thor, Ragnarok is the first Marvel film to undergo a major overhaul, but it's setting the stage for a major influx of wildly different characters. The way Hemsworth describes it, the same underdog attitude inspiring Thor and his companions to take on Cate Blanchett's all-powerful Hela in the last act of Ragnarok inspired the making of the movie as well. There was a sense of, if we are going to go out, let's go out swinging. And Hemsworth has proven that without that hammer, Thor's swing is stronger than ever.